The latter half of the 19th century was a time of upheaval for Western Europe. Colonialism was at its peak, but so was the growing unrest of many of Europe's colonies. France, one of the major powers of Imperial Europe, was prone to intense civil uprisings. Though they retained ruling power after the Revolution of 1789, the monarchists fell to public rule after the July Revolution of 1848. Around the world, technology transformed the human relationship to the natural world. These were the days of the steam engine, the typewriter, and industrial mass production. French artists rebelled against the stringent requirements of the established academies of artistic learning. They began exploring new styles of painting and new motivations for expression. One of the first and arguably the most influential of the new styles was Impressionism, which was greeted with mixed reactions. Some praised the impetuous, free expression and colorful displays of light, while many others rejected the style as unfinished, lazy, and pointless. Despite his Dutch roots and development under Dutch traditions, it was Van Gogh's life in France that would define his artistic career. To Vincent Van Gogh, discovering Impressionism was a breakthrough, a pathway to validity as an artist that did not require that he change himself or cage his expressive needs to fit the rules established by others. What you will need: materials and tools. An 11 by 14 piece of watercolor paper, a ruler, a pencil with a clean eraser or a kneaded eraser, these self-clean by stretching, and some masking tape, but take some of the stickiness off so it doesn't ruin your paper. Watercolor paints, of course, some water, and a paintbrush. I'm using an inch square brush. You can use whatever brush you have. And of course, your oil pastels. I have a couple of different sets. This one I just inherited from someone, and they're pretty soft, but they're a little old and dirty. And this is a set I received as a Christmas present from my son. They're a little bit firmer, but I like how they both work together. Preparing your paper, moistened and stretch. Before beginning any project that involves watercolor paint, it's a good idea to stretch your watercolor paper. The reason we do this is to avoid buckling, that is, the inevitable warping of the paper as the water is applied. When painting in small areas at a time, this can result in wildly warped paper that can make your project difficult to manage. By applying moisture to both sides of the paper equally and all at once, then all of the fibers of the paper become saturated by water and will expand. Uniform expansion of the paper means that there will be far less buckling, which will allow us to control the color. We aren't going to be using a lot of watercolor, but we still want to have a nice flat piece of paper for our oil pastels. Artist tape is best, but masking tape will also work. Before you stick the tape to the paper, however, be sure to lessen its stickiness, or else the tape will pull off the top layer of the paper. This is easily accomplished by pressing the masking tape to your shirt or pants, then peeling off the tape 2 or 3 times. Get a nice thin layer of lint on the tape before you apply it to the paper. As you apply the tape, gently encourage the paper to lay flat before sticking the edge. Use gentle pressure with your clean hands to press the paper flat from the center toward the edges. You don't need to create a wide margin around your paper, just enough to hold down the edge. Now, just allow it to dry. It will only take 10 minutes or so. Blossoming Almond Tree, an analysis of the composition. While our paper dries, let's take a look at Master Van Gogh's Blossoming Almond Trees. In order to paint like Van Gogh, we will need to understand how he composes his paintings. To compose your image means to fit the subject of your paintings onto the visual plane in the most appropriate way that you can. Perhaps the first thing to notice is the strong implication of a diagonal divide. Notice how the long branch stretching toward the upper left and how the left corner is occupied by the branch's thickest point and other small branches pointing toward that corner. This group of branches occupying that bottom left half all flow toward the left side of the painting, which means that this group and this group have all of their branches moving toward the right side and upper right corner. The other means of composing is by visual weight. This painting is more weighted toward the bottom 2/3. Dividing a visual plane by thirds is a preferred method used by painters for its intuitive, easy-to-create sense of balance. So to review, visual weight favors the lower 2/3. There is a strong diagonal, and 3 clusters of branching forms have divergent directions. Beginning your painting. Now that our paper is stretched, let's begin painting. Lightly re-moisten your paper before you add the color. Here I'm beginning with the light blue to designate my areas of lightest weight. As you can see in your reference, the background has a cloudy sort of effect, swirling between darker areas and lighter spaces. Without these distinguishing spaces of background color, our eyes would be left to follow the lines of the branches without direction, and we'd likely just get lost. Watercolor tends to dry a bit lighter than it looks when first painted. If you have only one blue color in your paint palette, just add more water to make these lightest spaces. You can also blot with a paper towel to lift paint up and make lighter spaces. When my brush is no longer flowing easily over the paper and it's creating dry brush marks, I know it's time to add more water, but not too much water. Tapping your brush of excess water will help you control your paint. This inner space is going to be the main line of action for the branch, that diagonal line the branches create. We also want to help make that sense of weight on the bottom where the branches originate. The darker blues of the background help the bolder branches emphasize that upward flow. This bolder blue pulls in attention, and our eyes move toward those deeper places. There's some depth to the upper right to help support that top third branch, which balances against the heavy bottom and helps redistribute our focus of attention. Don't touch your paper. Your finger oils will interfere with the watercolor paints. Notice that I'm not overblending. Van Gogh's style depends on visible paint strokes. Paint strokes are interesting, not distracting. Once you're finished, rinse your brush, tap out the extra water, and let your painting dry. He actually had a tree to look at. We just have his painting to look at. And when you're a few steps removed from the original thing, it's okay to start getting creative. We're just going to keep to our compositional rules of diagonals and 2/3. All right? And remember from looking at the almond trees, they are a little lumpy. Just remember these branches on this side all go to the left, and these branches on the right go up to the right. The rhythm, boom, ba-da-bum, 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 is very important. Those trailing rhythms, and then up and then down, is very organic, and it reinforces the idea that this is a natural form that we are recreating. Composing the flower groups, I have a white, kind of a gray, and these are going to be used for the flowers. And determining where to put our flowers is really just a matter of judgment. Generally speaking, flowers occur mostly at the ends of branches, but sometimes they kind of appear in these little invisible branches so they just group together. I'm going to start with the white. And the white is very important because this would become the first resist color. And it's hard to see white, so I brought in the gray to help along. This is going to be a little more time consuming than the branches, so it's going to take a while. I'm going to start at the top. That's because there's quite a lot of flower action here. Remember the shapes of those flowers. Of course, looking at flowers in the wild, you don't always see all 5 petals. In fact, that's pretty rare. So for the most part, we just sort of want to think in terms of these little pill-shaped strokes. Impressionists use these sort of blobby shapes to get the gist of what's going on, the general impression. And that's really what we're after. If they don't look precisely like flowers just yet, don't worry, they will. Imagine this is a paintbrush where you're just blopping on tiny strokes of paint or organic shapes of paint that are reminiscent of flowers. You need to overstress yourself with making them look like almond flowers, because even almond flowers don't look like almond flowers. You can always put in more branches. Who says you can't put in more branches? Nobody says you can't put in more branches. Maybe little wispy branches. Why not? do things the hard way. Doing things the hard way is hard. Do things the easy way, like an artist. The way they grow is they alternate back and forth, like along a zigzag. The gray also helps to set up and mark some value spaces for me. Never smear. No, no, no. Wrong. No, no, no. This. Notice how blobby they are. They're really not precision tools. It's a thick thing. And that is okay. That's what gives us the impressionist look. You say, I can't get details. I can't get details. No, you're never going to get details. That's not what this is about. This is about color and light and feelings and impressions of beauty, and admiration for nature, and the glorious repeated patterns of nature that guide and create us. This is not at all about details. When you look out across a landscape, you're not looking at details. You think you know what's going on, but that's just because your brain's telling you what it has interpolated according to previous patterns. It's got nothing to do with what you're looking at. You can't see every branch. You can't see every leaf. You can't discern every blade of grass. That would be maddening. Really close-up stuff, maybe. But most landscapes happen really far away. Even these studies, like blossoming almond branches, require a sense of forgiveness for yourself about how much of that beauty is going to be yours to master. Not all of it. Not all of it. Not by a long shot. There is no part of anything that an artist can ever do that is actually to recreate the thing. All we're doing is making pretty pictures that remind us of something. Just illusions in a flat space. Like, how do you know he was wrong? You don't. And no one's going to know that you were ever making a mistake either. This picture is going to be 100% you and your talents. And it's going to be perfect because it is yours. And that's all that it ever could be. Van Gogh did not have an easy life. He was plagued by insecurities, questioning his talents, his faith, how he was going to live with money. He questioned his friendships. who's always uncertain. He's a man of deep conviction. He's not a man to waste time. He spent every day painting, drawing, and that is how we paint like Van Gogh, with conviction, with the awareness that nothing we put on the canvas will be what we're looking at. But that's not the point. The point is to revel in beauty and understand our place in it. I'm going to come back and fill in some of this branch, this thicker branch, as part of this composition. Branches are broken all the time. Let's see them worrying about it too much. They still grow. They still grow. Broken doesn't mean done for. This means you're going to be moving in a different direction. I'm trying not to hit the camera with my head. That sounds just like a thick crayon-y kind of action. You know, I'm not really concerned with anything more than filling in this space with material to work with. I do have a reference of the original that I'm working from. And I hope you are as well. Not so much that you can recreate it, there I am with that word again. Make it exact. But it certainly helps to keep in mind and remember what it was that the master did. You don't have to go it alone. That's what our teachers are for, to help us. My table wobbles a lot. And oil pastels require no small amount of pressure sometimes. The oil pastels can go over previous applications of pastel. Just kind of have to be sort of one and done about it. Don't linger. Just trust yourself. Again, these are not expensive materials. Maybe some of you are watching this and thinking, oh, what if I was using professional stuff? Well, then you're probably going to have a much smoother time. I admit that different qualities of material do have a difference. But none of that has anything to do with painting like Van Gogh. Man is a method, man is psychology, not a salesman for a particular brand. And I think he might be appalled to consider that he was. But I don't think that he would say at any time that you have to have the best oil paints or you have to have the best pastels in order to be an artist. I really don't think he would say that ever. I'm going to call that good. At this point, find a clean eraser. Okay, now what we're going to do is start adding warm tones, really bring this to life and start to understand how we work with contrasts. So I have my warm colors here. I changed my bandage. That's nice and clean. You know, these brown tones, the taupes and the dark browns. Ooh, gosh, you know what? I can even bring in another dark brown. I mean, why not? How about, oh, yeah, I used this one to practice. Yeah, it must be part of it. Okay, so I've got my warm colors here. I'm gonna just really quickly wipe this off. All right, warm tones. What warm tones do is they lift something forward. And with all these cool blues in the background, adding these warm tones, these elegant little contour strokes. You don't have to blend or anything, just put them in. It's fine. Anyway, adding these warm tones is going to pull the branches forward along from the visual plane to float on top of the cool background. And we'll be able to manipulate that warmth, those temperatures, as we move along and as we develop this painting. Now, this technique using the oil pastels is like oil painting in that we work in layers. Oil painting, because it's fluid, is going to mix and react more quickly, more immediately, if that's what you're going for. But what Van Gogh did most of the time was to mix his colors visually on the canvas itself. And that's actually a technique used by many, if not all, of the Impressionists and post-Impressionists. They were keenly curious about how the human eye contributed to perceptions of light and color. Playing with those levels of perception was really the point behind all of those early 20th century movements, late 19th century, early 20th century movements. Blending happens when you start working with layers. As you can see, as I go back in with this original green, you see I'm getting my piece dirty. It's a bit clean. Doesn't matter if it's, you know, fat, or skinny, or pointy, as long as it's clean. This is just to help fill out the shapes a bit more, thicken those branches, add some interesting volume. What this medium allows us to do as we work with it is adjust perceptions of the particular colors that we're working with. If I work with orange, I'm going to get a new perceived color, something a little brighter. Now I'm not going to do the whole branch, just sections of it. I've got so many colors and juggling. Because there are other places to go. Of course, I don't want to linger in any one place too long. We got places to go. So let's, again, I'm generally following the original, but I'm really just obeying certain rules that we find inherent in his style. Mixed visually, using layers of either pure color or minimally mixed colors. I want to encourage participation by the viewer. I don't think that he constructed the almond branch. I think he saw an almond branch from a particular perspective that fulfilled his compositional preferences. I don't for a moment think that he imagined these rules for the branches. Photographers go out of their way to find a subject and then approach that subject from an angle that fills compositional needs. Painters the same way. You don't have to make it up. Nature is beautiful and offers many glorious options for subjects and beauty. It's really hard to not have something beautiful in nature. The difference between just drawing something, anything, and creating a composition really does come down to human psychology of perceptions, how we present things, and then how those presentations are interpreted. Perhaps more importantly, that second part. Because I can say whatever I want, but if I'm not saying it in a language you understand, then I'm really not telling you anything, am I? Just so with artists, there are rules. Even as we try to break them, those rules still exist. Breaking a rule does not unmake a rule. No more than breaking a branch on a tree unmakes that branch. Just means things are going to grow in a different direction. Right. So you can see how this is all starting to come together and how these branches are lifting from that background blue. I love it when a painting starts to get to this point. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll come back to some yellow at this point. Make this one really bright. I love that. I love brightness. Now, it's not exactly like the original. All these blobs of paint piling on each other in just the right places. That's okay. It's okay. Is this a way of painting? Yes, it is. Drawing and painting aren't so different. And at this point, the way that I am adding the color is painterly. But one big difference between a drawing and a painting is the amount of canvas or paper that it covers. And by the time we're done with this, we will be edge to edge, corner to corner. Oops. All of it will be covered with our medium. And that's what makes it a painting. If I was doing this with graphite, it would be the same. It's kind of where I come from when I say drawing is a meditation of analysis. Your relationship with your medium is very important. Your relationship to your study, the subject, is of course very, very important. But there is no greater or more important relationship in drawing than understanding you. What are your limitations? What do you think about? What do you hold in your head before you go to the canvas? Is what you're thinking preventing you from actually connecting with what's really there? All right, now we're going to get into some of our mid-range color where we are introducing the cool greens, which are dark greens that you may have, or maybe just the green that comes with your set. It's all fine. What this layer is really all about is opposites. A lot of Van Gogh's color work is about the relationship, the visual relationship of opposite colors, in this case red and green, as it plays through this piece in a very minimal way. These are very strong colors, so not a lot of them has to be added. Instead, what we get mostly are these tints, meaning you have your basic primary plus white as a tint, like these pinks, or even this, a really, really pale pink, maybe, if you have one. Your red tones here, as they may appear in the picture, are playing a battle, or a game of contrast against the greens that are present through the branches. And what that does visually is add another sense of depth and richness. It also pulls us around the picture because we really like to follow red. The human eye is really drawn to red. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add pink to where I've marked with the grays first. You know, I wanted some value there, and I'm going to use white to mix because once you've added a color, putting white on it probably isn't going to make it white again, but it will make it a less pink. So I'm going to start up here in this corner, go back over my grays. Notice how already the introduction of even these pale reds is so striking, as a comparison to, like, say, down here where it's gray or nothing at all. You know, we're already getting that amazing play between our eyes within the green tones, even in the blue, but still present in those branches and the yellows, and playing against those red tones. I'm going to do something even more drastic. Normally I would save this till later, but I really want to show this off. Wipe that clean. There you go. The power of even the tiniest bit of red. It's quite extraordinary. What's this? Blue. Right there. That's so great. Okay. Use red sparingly. It's very powerful. Very powerful. Everywhere in nature. Most people don't appreciate it. A little red. Moving through the branch here, I've noticed on that original. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Does so much. I'm going to set this one over here just so I'm not tempted to overuse him. I didn't tape down very, very well. Here I'll demonstrate how to make one of these almond flowers. I have some pre-prepared blue that I will use to contrast against this white pastel. And notice I'm just blobbing it on really thick, sort of making 5 relatively petal-like shapes. This would be like a full flower. The pink then comes in for a little bit of accent toward the center or toward the middle of the petals, wherever you think that pink should go. Of course, not all petals are the same. Going to blend it with some white. These darker colors of green, like this, would be closer things that are more immediate to your field of vision. In this picture, and as is a common tool in painting in general, we can also translate that to meaning psychological importance. The days of the Impressionists were days that challenged more than just art norms, but also norms in how people began to understand themselves. And to Europe, that was entering a time of deep upheaval and change and unrest. So artists were leaving old conventions behind as a way of searching new conventions of how to live, governance, how we define our societies, how we behave with one another. These are heavy topics. So Impressionism, and then later Post-Impressionists like Van Gogh, were seeking a new way to appreciate real things and to appreciate art as a language. He was a man always searching for his place, how to be himself in a world that, from birth, was defining him according to other people in ways that were beyond his control, and into a world that really rarely lets us be ourselves without having to answer for it in some way. Van Gogh spent a lot of time alone, exploring what it was he saw, how he could speak those words, how his voice manifests. And over time, he let his influences
from part of his painting because it is natural that we are ourselves changed by the influences. So with these dark greens, this is how I can add weight now that I am really pulling out the dimension. If you don't have anything darker than this green, consider a blue. These darker cobalt blues are nice. I'll show you how that might look. So you can get it to go. I just want to make sure. These are very crayon-like, so I want to make sure that it's working nice. I'm going to add a little bit in there just to show you that you can use these blues. Add in shadow or depth, as we might want to say. A little bit of importance. Yeah, these dark blues work nice. Again, small amounts, like little dots. We're not Seurat here, we're not doing pointillism, but still, a little goes a long way with these very dark colors, very powerful colors. Red, blue, green, your bold primaries, very powerful. Use with caution.